Cool. So as you might be aware, so you can like do this mentally, or if you have a pen like by the side, you can just grab a pen and do this, right? So what I want you to do is that, see, there are these are like four generic behavior patterns, right? And you should just put a plus sign, like if you should act, if you actually do that, or if you should do, like you think you should do that, right? So you can just take a minute, make a note of it mentally, right? And if you're not sure about like any one of these behaviors, so you can circle that, right? So I'll just give you guys a minute and you can take a note mentally. Yes, do you want to do it like on the screen for everyone so that they can also get an idea?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you just want me to tell you?
Yeah. So you can just tell like, what would you do and what you actually do. So like, if I run a meeting, I limit the agenda to just a few items. You actually do this, or you plan to do this. So like this.
How do you address things that, sometimes it actually ends up being like that, but sometimes it's like, meetings go their own flow, their own path. So do I put it on both?
Maybe we can circle this. Yeah, you can do that as well. You can do that as well.
So I think this one is both. Like,
okay. And for the next three?
I treat each new problem in its own unique way. Yeah, I don't. This is like neither, right?
Okay.
Like, try to look at problems like, most problems I don't think are all that unique. So try and approach it with the things we already know. I routinely teach what I know to other people. I guess this should be a should do, but I don't think I actually do. And to be productive, I multitask a lot. Yeah, so I personally I end up multitasking a lot. I don't know if it is more productive. So again, so this is a question like a circle. Sure. Yeah.
Great. So like, what do we get from this small exercise, right? I hope every one of you have done this, right? No, you haven't passed or failed. It's not a numeric thing which usually happens in schools and colleges, right? So if you checked on the right box, did you also do it for the left? Like, this was a surprise which I wanted to keep, because usually we do just check one box, right? So what do we learn from this, right? The major thing. Every time there is a check on one box but not the other, that means that there is a disconnect in your reality. Either a habit is waiting to be formed or being broken. Let's say if you are actually doing something and you don't want to do that, right? So that means that that is a bad habit, and vice versa, right? 1 second. Yeah. Cool. So coming to like what exactly is smart thinking? Smart thinking, like as we commonly know of it, like we misassume it with intelligence, right? But it is not intelligence. It's the ability to solve new problems using our current knowledge, which comes from forming the right habits, right? So smart thinking, if I have to put it in an equation, is to just gather very high quality knowledge and apply it correctly. That's the crux of smart thinking, right? Roughly speaking. So does it even matter? I'll just give you a very cool story. So anyone of you like know this guy? Got it. So this guy is a billionaire, right? So what he did, his name is James Tyson. So he was working in a sawdust company, right? So there he was having trouble cleaning the sawdust with the vacuum cleaner, right? The problem was that the cleaner would lose its efficiency, like that pipe, because the more he used, the more dust would get attached to the pipe. So how he solved this problem, right? He used the concept of sawdust machines that creates cyclones and attached it to the vacuum cleaner, right? That helped the machine to become more effective, and the result was $1 billion company. So he's like technically stole an idea from some other field and applied it to his primary field or his problem statement, right? So if I have to sum up smart thinking, like it's a pretty simple process, nothing much complicated. The first one is like creating smart habits and changing behavior, right? The second one is promoting quality learning. The third one is understanding deeply how things work. The fourth one is making comparisons between different fields altogether. 1 second, yeah. And the fifth one is like, how you can maximize your memory and learning. When you're learning things, how you can use your memory to the best of your method, right? So that in total is smart thinking. So I'll not go for smart habits because Avinash had already covered this in a previous all hands. I'll start with quality thinking, quality learning, right? So whenever an event is happening in your life, right, you kind of perceive it from two perspectives. One is like a complete noob, right? Like this cat. Let's say if I throw you into some unexpected situation where you have no expertise, right? You will be curious all the state, and you'll be also in a fearful state, you'll see, right? So this is called as bottom up processing, right? The second is like you have that expertise, you act like the king of the jungle, or you are at the top of the hierarchy. Let's say if I take engineers as an example. So if they have mastery over unity, for them a simple unity problem would that not that much of a challenge as to a complete HR who has no expertise in that field, right? So that is how we process things in life, generally speaking, like from a bottom up perspective and from a top down perspective. So basically, as you might be aware, there are like two types of memories. The short term memory that is the that stays with us for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And then there is a long term memory from which we usually function in life. So the goal here is to hack your short term memory so that you can get better for long term memory results, and you promote the culture of quality learning altogether. So how do we do that, right? You might ask me. So this analogy is very famous because if I ask you to, let's say, remember any major thing in life, right? Or let's say any major event, at max you'd be able to remember roughly about 3 to 5 major things, right? Let's say if you went to a different experience altogether, you'll be able to sum up around 3 to 5 experiences, generally speaking, which impacted you deeply. So we follow the rule of three, right? That is, for everything, we try to consolidate into three main chunks. Like, what are the three major points for this? Now, coming to how to apply this practically, right? These are like normal three steps which I was able to come up with in the context of a meeting, right? So you prepare in advance for a general context, right? You organize advancedly about things, about the material which needs to be discussed, so that you just get a rough idea, right? The second is pay deep attention and try connecting the dots with your current learnings, right? Don't multitask with your thinking in the middle of meetings, because that would overwhelm you a lot and you'll feel like you're not learning deeply enough. And the final is, just after the meeting, just take 5 minutes to review the gist of it, right? Is it for the next week, or is it for the long term? Let's say after 1 year, how would this learning impact me, right? So what I would like to, this is a life lesson from Buddha. He talks about following the middle path in life. So what that means is that you combine that curious state and you combine your expertise, right? So if I have to use this analogy, you just walk the middle path, right? So let's say in this yin and yang circle, if the white circle comprises of, let's say, top down processing, right? And the black circle comprises of bottom up processing. So you walk in such a way that your one foot is in the white circle and one foot is in the black circle. So that is how you can optimize quality learning, right? Just focus on three things at max and try to combine all the new experiences with your current learnings. Now the second part is understanding how things deeply work, right? So if you see in life, usually what happens is that you have a lot of casual knowledge about a lot of different things, right? It could be related to each and everything. So all your knowledge is nested with one another, right? It's like a nest that if you pick out one twig and study it, then you take another twig and study it deeply, right? All casual knowledge is nested, right? So casual knowledge is nothing but your answer to the question of why you are doing a specific thing in life, right? So the more deeper your why is, the more the more easily you'll be able to solve deeper problems in life. So if you go on one explanation, you'll usually see that every explanation has another one associated with it, right? That provides more deeper understanding slash casual information about why that specific explanation is more accurate. So if you go on deeply and go on deeply observing things, you'll understand that you'll uncover more and more of these nests, right? Um, so the thing with casual knowledge is that the more deeper your casual knowledge in life, the more easily you'll be able to break down complicated ideas into simple ones and provide value to the world, right? Because that is what products are at the end of the day. So now, how to improve your casual knowledge, right? Just a simple roadmap is that whenever you're explaining something to someone, right, there are always a lot of gaps in your thinking, right? So if you just self-explain yourself and just write it down on a piece of paper, you'll be able to identify gaps in your thinking. Okay, where am I lacking on this, right? This comes usually from like self-explaining to yourself again and again, right? Until and unless those gaps are closed. And this one is one of my favorite effects. So basically, it's the illusion of explanatory depth, right? You study one thing and you understand, and you get that assumption that okay, I know it, right? But usually what happens is that you're only roughly able to retain 25 to 30% of information if you're learning something or reading something for the first time, right? Usually you'll have to do it 3 to 4 times in order to get a complete gist of it, right? And instead of being abstract, which JK always talks about, right? Be very specific. Identify that gap very deeply in your learning process, in your thinking, right? So some examples, I was just searching on this, right? I know basically how these things work, how a zipper works, how a toilet flush works, and like how piano keys make sound. But when I started explaining myself, I was only able to like just get one or two explanations, right? So if you're very curious about like how stuff works, and like you want to just experiment deeply and just understand different learnings, right? You can like check out this site howstuffworks.com. It offers you very in-depth explanation about certain things, right? Now this also requires some input. So small activity, right? What do I mean by making comparison? So Ryan, do you want to try this out, this exercise? Find out one out from here.
Sure, okay. Oh, great! It's numbers. One thing I'm really good at, Debashish. I guess 35 is the odd one. No,
Okay.
11.
Anyone
11.
else? Got it. Anyone else? Raj, maybe you're laughing. Yeah.
14.
Sorry.
14.
Sorry.
What?
Correct.
14?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So the answer was pretty simple. It's just that just because it was numbers, so you got confused. The
Sorry.
14 is the only even number out of these all odd numbers, right? So this is the first example, right? The second one is one second. Yeah, for me, would you want to try this out? So if foot is related to toe in a certain way, so what is related to face then? Okay, this is tough. Anyone else would like to try?
Nose?
Correct. Who said this? Who said this?
Athu.
Great. Yeah, so like toes have an action to foot, right? They help us in walking. So in the same way, nose also helps us in breathing, right? So what do I mean by this activity, right? You in the first example, you use the power of similarity, right? You see which things are similar in your environment, and then you just pick the odd one out, right? The second is using the power of analogies across various fields. So this is just a layman example because this is the best I could come up with, but you can further make nuances of it in your own understanding state. So basically, there are two types of learning, right? So if I just had given you the answers first, it would be more of a passive learning, right? That okay, I'm just giving a boring lecture, right? But now when I actively asked you to participate in this, at least you might have retained like 50% of it, right? Rather than 5%, which is much better, right? So this comes to our final point, like how do we maximize memory effectiveness, right? Try to create as many environments like this we usually do, but trying to create environments of active learnings as much as we can, right? Using diagrams as descriptions, and like basically whenever we are solving a problem, just trying to change the context of it, because usually the first solution that comes from a problem is usually from that environment only. So if we are seeing that problem from a different environment or a different context, that usually gives us some different perspectives altogether in life. And the best way is you teach others, right? You give more all hands, right? If you want to implement your teachings, so that is the fastest way to learn. Just one second, yeah. And make it as stimulating for all the senses and possible, and you become a Sherlock, right? So that is how it goes. Just some final quotes to end it on. Of course, this is one of my favorite authors, Naval Ravikant. He talks about the greatest superpower is the ability to change yourself, right? Not others. One more, whatever you do in life, like surround yourself with smart people who argue with you, right? I'm sure you all have a lot of arguments, and that's good. And again from Naval Ravikant, like in a billion dollar company, the employees aren't working any harder than people in a dollar company. They're just doing the right things, right? And a final quote: simple living and high thinking will give you success in life, right? So just to sum it up, smart thinking is like, the ability to first of all gather high quality knowledge and then solve new problems using your current knowledge. So it's just technically just more creative thinking for that matter, right? It consists of creating smart habits and changing behaviors, like, promoting quality learning, understanding deeply about how various things work across various domains, making comparisons for the same, and also experimenting with different learning methods, what suits you on an individual level, right? Are you more of a visual person? Are you more of a writer? Like whatever, like, whatever is personal to you. And often when you feel stuck with a problem, or let's say you reach an impasse that you're not able to solve that, right? Change the context for that problem. Either become more specific, identify those gaps, or take a break and do something else. Let the brain recover. Maybe you'll often see that after breaks you usually become more creative, right? That is how you become a smart thinker. So just to